Hello, 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 guys. Welcome to episode 1 of Living on the Edge. We hope you guys liked last week's episode, and we hope you guys have fun with this one. So we have a special guest today with Godzilla Mendoza. So that's exciting. All right. So first we have Ian. So Ian, say hi and tell us, what was your introduction to Spider-Man?
Hey everybody, I hope everyone's having a good time. It's fun to be back for a new episode. My introduction to Spider-Man was probably, I think, the early 90s animated series. I mean, it's hard to say because honestly it's hard to remember that far back, but yeah, I'd probably say that. Actually, it's funny, I was actually thinking about the very first Spider-Man comic I ever read earlier today, which I might bring up a little bit in regards to the discussion for one of the discussions we'll be having on this podcast a little later. But yeah, the character as a whole would have been the 94 animated series, I think, which was awesome.
I'm up next.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Xavier Mendoza. I run the YouTube channel Godzilla Mendoza. I don't know if you've heard of me. I talk about Spider-Man a lot. My introduction to the character was when I was about 3 years old. This is probably like 2001, when I was going to the store with my mom, and she was in the pharmacy aisle, and I found an action figure of Spider-Man that someone had picked up and then left behind there. And even though I was just still barely able to walk around, I stood up and I grabbed it and I said, can I have this? And she was like, sure. And I took it home, and I showed it to my dad, and actually had to have him explain what it was, because I had never really understood what Spider-Man was before that. And both of my parents are huge comic book nerds. I mean, they named me after Professor X from X-Men. So hearing them both tell me stories about what Spider-Man was, and then seeing the movie the year after that, is what really got me into the character, and I've just been a fan ever since.
Nice. Well, I'm Alec. I am a senior staff writer at On Comics Run. Ian is too.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. I write reviews for all the Amazing Spider-Man comics and the new Venom comics. My first introduction to Spider-Man was a mix of the first Sam Raimi movie and the 90s animated series, as it was doing reruns on whatever channel it was on. I think Jetix or whatever it was. God, that was so long ago. But yeah, I didn't understand what I was watching, but I remember it just striking something in me that I never felt before at such a young age. And so I kept wanting to watch more and more and more. Growing up, God, it's going to be a sob story. I was bullied, boo-hoo, in school. So I related a lot to Peter Parker. Watching Spider-Man, reading the comics, those are what helped me grow into the person I was, and they still do every day. So yeah, that's how I got introduced to Spider-Man. That's how all of us did. So tonight we have a pretty meaty show for you guys. Meaty is not the best term, but it is the term I'm going with. So we had something very liked it. We had the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, and we have several things to talk about. So Ian, why don't you go first?
All right. So yeah, the trailer for Far From Home dropped this morning. I've watched it a few times since, and I've kind of tried to go a little bit scene by scene. I'm admittedly not the best person for picking up on subtle details right away when I first see something, so kind of helped on noticing a few things here and there. But I gotta say, the trailer looks pretty fun so far. the film looks pretty promising. I mean, obviously, the really big thing that everyone has been talking about, that everyone will be talking about, I think, for the near future anyway, is the reveal of Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, which I freaking love, since Mysterio is actually one of my top 3 favorite Spider-Man villains of all time, right up there with Doc Ock and Kraven the Hunter. I'm a huge sucker for the really overly theatrical, really boisterous, big, overly, really dramatic villains. So, Mysterio being in a movie has me happy already, but in particular the fact that, yes, we see the fishbowl. They have kept Dr. I keep putting initials in front of him. They kept Mysterio's fishbowl, and I am so goddamn happy about that. I honestly didn't think there was any doubt of it, considering the whole Hela head thing that they actually kept in for Thor Ragnarok. I mean, once you've done that as a studio, there's not really anything you can say, that looks too ridiculous for us to adapt properly. So I'm kind of glad that that's in there. There's lots of other stuff to kind of pick at and notice too. Like there's shots of the elementals, which appear to be part of the plot for the film's narrative. I think it's possibly supposed to be Hydra Man and Molten Man. I think I've heard some people say, which Molten Man in particular tickles me because, as I mentioned earlier, the very first Spider-Man comic honestly probably one of the very first comics I ever owned, period, was Amazing Spider-Man number 440, which is part of the storyline The Gathering of the Five, second part, I guess, with which actually happened to feature the Molten Man on the cover. So, I mean, if he's actually in this movie, I'll actually be pretty tickled about that. But yeah, the film looks pretty enjoyable. One thing I am looking forward to the most, actually, weirdly enough, though, is the stuff with Aunt May. Like the opening to the American trailer, because actually 2 trailers dropped for the movie today. There was the American one and then an international one that dropped as well. I like a few things about the international one, but the American one I like a little bit more overall, just because the stuff at the beginning with Aunt May, where we see that in the beginning, Peter as Spider-Man ends up showing up to help with this charity foundation that May's working for, running. I don't know what the exact details are there, but it was actually a really nice bit, and I actually really, really, really like the idea of May doing that. It's something that, I mean, if anyone who's played the Spider-Man PS4 game, that's very much what she did there, or even in Dan Slott's Amazing Spider-Man run, how she briefly was running the Uncle Ben Foundation, which was or Ben Parker Foundation. So it's a very fitting role for her character, and I'm actually kind of curious to see how she plays out in this movie, since obviously this movie taking place after Avengers Endgame, and her having to live for a little while after only just recently finding out that her nephew was was Spider-Man, to have him briefly cease out of existence and then come back, like the trauma that she would have gone through for that. I'm kind of curious to see whether that'll be played out at all. I don't imagine she'll have a very large role, since the majority of the film is set in Europe, and it doesn't look like she's going along with Peter and the others as a chaperone, which sucks, but yeah, it looks pretty fun, and I mean, the Mysterio looks awesome. I mean, there's a couple shots on the trailer that look like they were ripped right out of a comic, so with him, so awesome stuff. You wanna
take it from here?
Yep, Xavier, you wanna jump in?
I think it's important to mention that they got one detail right that I was not expecting them to, is that they made sure Quentin Beck has pretty much the same haircut.
Oh yeah, they did.
They actually gave him a little bit of a bowl cut, and I would of all the details to keep, I was not thinking that would be one of them. But okay,
did they keep that with Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2? I can't remember.
No, Doc Ock, his hair was more like parted down the middle and looked a little bit more modern.
Okay.
But I think there's a lot of stuff in here that was kind of fan servicey that got me excited. Like seeing Spidey actually like swinging through the city again, because Homecoming took place mostly in like neighborhoods and Queens, so he wasn't really doing a whole lot of swinging around on skyscrapers. This one actually starts with him swinging around in front of Avengers Tower, but it seems to be getting like heavily renovated and rebuilt. There's a lot of construction you can see back there, and that makes me wonder exactly what that has to mean for the MCU as a whole. Like, are the Avengers taking back the tower and like re-implementing it, or has something else like Oscorp moved in? Because that would be kind of a neat sort of way to lead into Phase 4. I like a lot of the other little stuff, like little character moments, like that bit at the ending with Flash Thompson describing why he likes Spider-Man so much, but then calls Peter Parker a name. That feels very true to that character, and that's actually been something I was kind of hoping that these movies would lean more heavily into, because the other ones didn't really touch on that. Is I love the irony that Flash Thompson is a huge Spider-Man fanboy, but also is bullying him at the same time. And he's actually one of my favorite side characters from the comics. So even though they're doing a pretty different take on him in this series, like he's less of like a conventional jock kind of bully character. He's more of just an asshole. I do kind of want to see what they do with that. I'm glad that they're finally going forward with Michelle being a love interest, because I thought she wasn't in the first one enough to really give me any kind of sense of like their chemistry. Like in Homecoming, she was in that whole movie for like 90 seconds total, and really all she did was just, say a couple of snarky one-liners. And I'm excited to see her, kind of fill that love interest role a little bit more, so we can compare how she does versus like Emma Stone or Kirsten Dunst from the other movies. And then obviously, Mysterio looks awesome. I have a bit of a gripe, is that he's revealed with his helmet off, and that makes me worry that it's going to be one of those like only wearing it in the middle of an action scene thing. So like, what's a good example of this is like the Ant-Man movies. Ant-Man has his helmet on maybe like 20% of the time, and like the second movie particularly, it always just kind of like he hits a button and it clicks off. Even Iron Man does that. I think they're going to do that, and like Quentin Beck's face is going to be visible almost the entire time. We'll see the fishbowl helmet like, I don't know, like 4 minutes out of the 2-hour movie at worst. And I kind of knew that was an eventuality, because a big actor like Jake Gyllenhaal needs more face time, but it's still kind of unfortunate just because it's such a big trademark of the character. I think that they could have maybe gone with maybe a better sort of compromise with that by having the helmet become partially translucent, so you could like see inside the fishbowl and like see his face in there. But maybe they will do that. Who knows? And then I guess what I really do like the most is that Peter seems a little bit more reluctant to be a superhero now. And I feel like that's very true to the character, and very important for Spider-Man, is that being a superhero sucks and hurts and is a big drag on your social life. And I feel like the first movie kind of glorified it a lot. And it would be a nice little character arc if Infinity War kind of swatted him down on that and was like, no, this is serious. You gotta really accept that there's consequences and stakes going on with this. You're not just, being a big fancy superhero. You're in danger. There's people's lives in danger. And maybe he'll start embracing that side of it a little more in this one. But I guess for now, that's all of my thoughts.
All right. Well, that sounded so. Okay, I didn't mean for that to sound so condescending. I don't mean for that to be like, well, okay, but yeah, you guys. I'll try to add enough new stuff to the table on this, but yeah, Mysterio looks amazing. I'm glad the fishbowl is there to begin with, because at a point I was just kind of scared that it was, I mean, I wasn't really scared, but like I was kind of worried, like what's the possibility that they just don't have the fishbowl at all, or it's just like something shown in a flashback that's just a reference to the character. But I'm glad it's there. I'm liking. I like the idea of trying to be the hero because that's very, at least in my experience, reading and watching Mysterio, that's something he would absolutely do. Try to win over the public and win over important people's trust by creating illusions to make himself look like a hero, because all the world's his stage. And I hope they play into I'm looking forward to see if they play into that as much as I think they will. I don't want to talk about certain rumors about the plot that I read up on because this trailer doesn't show anything. And in case people don't want to know, I won't say anything. But I hope that he and Peter have an interesting relationship, because I really don't want... Because, like, I remember watching Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I just felt nothing for Electro because he had nothing on a personal level to Peter. Like, even villain, he still had that emotional resonance with Peter. So I think my thing is, like, I feel like the best Spider-Man villains are the ones that have something in connection to Peter himself. And I'm hoping that they do this well with Mysterio, because that was like the main thing I was worried about with this movie. It's like, how the hell are Mysterio and Peter gonna be tied together? And they were able to do that in the last one by having Adrian Toomes be his date's father, which I thought was a great twist. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing what Mysterio does and how he ties in with Peter. The Elementals look really interesting. I don't know if they're going to call them by their actual names from the comics, or if they're just replacing them, like if they're replacing Hellfire with Molten Man, and if they're replacing Hydron with
Hydro Man.
With Hydro Man. But because some people were like, oh, that's Sandman. And I'm like, I don't know why. I don't really like Sandman being that much of a side character. So we'll see how that turns out. An interesting tidbit that somebody showed on Twitter was that in each of the scenes with like the 3 elementals shown, there's a license plate that says the if we're assuming that they are Molten Man, Hydro Man, and Sandman, it shows on the license plate the year and issue of their introductions. At least I think. So.
Oh wow! I didn't even pick up on that. That's a really cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, somebody pointed it out on Twitter. I thought it was really cool. So, I mean, because of that, I kind of assume they are Hydro Man, Molten Man, and Sandman. But like, I'll be fine if it's Hydro Man and Molten Man. But I don't know. I don't want Sandman just yet, but we'll see what they do. Main thing that I was so looking forward to after seeing the set photos from this summer, Peter and Nick Fury together. Yeah, that was, ever since I was 13, 14, I can't remember, but like for the longest time I wanted to see a movie with teenage Peter Parker and Nick Fury working together and bouncing off of one another. That's like, I'm like, if I can just get one more if I have to have one more Spider-Man movie ever made, like there will be no more made in my lifetime, I want them to have Peter and Nick Fury working together in some capacity. And I don't know how long Samuel L. Jackson is going to continue being in the MCU, because I kind of assume he'd be done after Endgame. But they have lots of issues. I'm going to say that right now. They have lots of issues. But one of the best things about them was the relationship between Peter and Nick. And finally getting that in a film set in the MCU, that's something that I've been dreaming about for so long, and I'm really happy they're doing it. And I hope, and from the looks of it, Nick is not just going to be like have like 2 minutes of footage and they're just showing it all in the trailer. At least I hope not, because we all know how Sony is with marketing. But I'm really excited to see where their relationship goes. Even if Samuel L. Jackson doesn't do any more after this, if he's done after this or whatever, I'm still happy we're getting this, because it's something I've wanted for a long time. The cinematography looks great. It's a major step up. I think they have the cinematographer from Daredevil, so that if that's an indicator of anything, that means the action's going to look amazing. Sorry, I'm just looking over my notes. I like May knowing Peter's secret, because I think that's a welcome change of pace from the formula for Spider-Man movies. But what I'm hoping is that it's not just what we're seeing in the trailer. Like, that's not just their dynamic. Because I was talking with somebody on Twitter about how it was going to be, and I'm just like, yeah, like, it would be very worrying if it's just going to be her being supportive and no worries whatsoever, because they made a huge deal about why Peter didn't want to tell May in Homecoming. And I like others, I didn't really like that her finding out that he was Spider-Man was a joke. I was fine with it. It was funny in the moment, but
Can I interject something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I actually remember near the end of J. Michael Straczynski's run, he was the writer who did the book where May found out, in the comics. And I remember on the very final issue of his run, there was a quote at the end by Kevin Feige himself saying, "The scene where May finds out Peter is Spider-Man is one of my favorites in comics ever. I can't wait to put that on film someday." And it's kind of jarring and baffling that he took that same concept for that scene and then made it like comedy based, because it was really heavy in the book. So
especially because that was just, I think that's one of the best moments in the character's history. So to have it just be like a joke right before the credits, like, it's, if take out what it means, it's a funny joke, I think. I mean, it may not be other people's sense of humor, but I laughed. But then as time went on, I'm just like, oh wait, if this is her actually finding out that he's Spider-Man, because at first I didn't realize that, but as time went on, I'm like, wait, is this them doing that? And then when I realized, I'm just like, I hope they follow up on it well. So from this trailer, I mean, I like her being supportive and I like them being a team. Because again, that kind of reminds me about the Ultimate Comics, but later on, not when she found out during the Ultimate version of the Clone Saga and just screamed, "Get out of my house," and then had a heart attack. But I hope that we see a scene at least where she kind of crumbles a bit and just kind of has a panic attack. She's trying to like mask that worry with support.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think that would be kind of neat too, is just because like Infinity War kind of glossed over that and we didn't really get any update on how that was going. So especially after the events of Infinity War, that could be a really great thing to tie in. It's just like, she could really yell about like, you died. You're back now.
Yeah.
Like, this is super dangerous and I can't believe you're still doing it. And I don't know how to handle the stress.
Yeah.
So that could definitely be a really interesting scene for them to work on. I mean, who knows?
I mean, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, because I mean, I'm assuming that May wasn't one of the ones disappeared by the snap as well. In which case, she basically, after living through the death of Peter's parents and then also the death of Ben, now
the one other person she has in her life, the one other constant, this one person that she's dedicated her life to raising and
helping grow into a better person and helping survive and whatnot suddenly disappears too. Like that can't be shit that's presented as just being brushed off or laughed off or whatnot. So I think it's important, I think, for the film to address that.
Yeah. So I'm just we'll see how it turns out. I'd like to hope, because I mean I think it was Kevin Feige or the Russos said that she did survive the snap. So so I don't know if she might be in Endgame. Who knows? That movie's being so tightly kept under wraps, like anybody could be in it at this point.
That's amazing, and that's the best part.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
they're
that
only using the first. Yeah, they're only using the first 15 minutes of the movie for all the promotional stuff. Which, can we just have that for all films now? Most especially Sony shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I said on Twitter, and I was really tired of seeing the final shot of the movie in a trailer, and it got something like 2,000 likes.
It's a true statement.
Yeah, I'm just really tired of how much shit gets shoved in. Not even just the trailers, but the TV spots in particular. Because as someone who watches like a lot of superhero-based TV in particular, like I will watch The Flash when it airs on TV, or I will watch Legends of Tomorrow. I get bombarded with that shit like at least 2 months in advance. Like, I mean, The Flash is on tonight, and I'm gonna probably be watching it later once we're done here. But I swear, like, there's probably going to be at least 3 or 4 different ads for Captain Marvel playing during that, and there will be for the next few months. And I feel like when that happens, like, half the friggin' movie is spoiled for me by the time I go into the theater, and I don't want that. I really don't. So
the thing is, I think Captain Marvel, like, I think they're keeping some of Captain Marvel under wraps too, because there's a theory that Rhodey might even be in the movie, and they're hiding him. But okay, back on topic. Sorry, I'm not blaming you guys. No. But okay, so yeah, I hope May. I hope there's good development there. I know a lot of people were up in arms about her and Happy having a thing, but literally, I couldn't give less of a shit.
I don't care about that either. I really couldn't fathom why people got that pissed off about that part. Like, she's dated tons of guys in the comics.
She almost married Otto fucking Octavius.
Yeah.
Like,
not to mention, I mean, the whole thing's an homage to her dating Jarvis too, right? Because they can't do Jarvis because, I mean, the person Jarvis has been dead for, I'm guessing, a couple decades or so within the MCU continuity, and she's certainly not dating the Jarvis AI.
Yeah,
which is now also dead.
Yeah, exactly.
But his vision, it's confusing and kind of weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't see the, like, so many people were being like, if this is true, I will not watch movies. Like, yes, you fuck. Even to just complain about it, you'll go see the movie. But I don't want to get into that bowl of worms. But yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, I wasn't all happy about it, but like after I get it, happy, but like seeing Marisa Tomei and Jon Favreau like working off of each other, it's fine. It's completely serviceable. It's like I don't like it'll make for fine comedy, sure. Maybe it could lead to something actually impactful and emotional. We'll see. But honestly, I don't care. Like it's not detrimental to the movie. But
and I mean, for like the Jon Favreau's part, I mean, the guy helped give us the MCU, and it's at all whatsoever with the first Iron Man film. He wants a chance to just play a little bit and play his character a little bit more. I'm all for it. I mean,
exactly.
Happy was honestly one of the most fun parts of the MCU in regards to supporting characters for me. So
yeah,
for one, I thought he was great as Foggy Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Oh, that takes me back. That takes me back.
I don't want to remember that. Because I remember Jennifer Garner Electra. Don't do that.
How can you see into my eyes? Oh god. Okay. But I told my friends somebody edit Daredevil the movie, but instead of the actual versions of Bring Me to Life and My Immortal, replace it with the Kidz Bop versions.
Oh god, dude, yes.
I can't believe that doesn't exist already.
I wish it did. I'll do it my goddamn self if I have to, but one day
Send me a link to that.
I will if I can ever find the time for it. But okay, couple more things. That one shot where Peter's looking at the suit on his hanger, I liked it because it really reminded me of that shot from Spider-Man 2, where Peter was looking at the Spidey suit and his suit that he was going to wear to MJ's play. So I like that, but also it's distracting with the happy music playing over it, but he gives this really traumatized look to the suit. Like he looks like he's on the verge of tears looking at the suit. So
it's really quick, but it's great. You're totally right.
Yeah. And that's that you can just tell that like he's just I don't want to say broken, but like something inside him is just tired. And I love that. That's yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. A couple things I just wanted to mention about that scene in particular. The one thing I noticed is that when you actually see his inside his suitcase, when he's packing it, there's a shot of that, and inside the suitcase you can actually see the old bottles of the web fluid that Peter made himself.
Yeah.
And between obviously he's not wearing the Iron Spider suit, but I almost wonder if even without that and just with the suit that he's wearing, if it's even still like I feel like if whether Tony lives or dies at the end of Endgame, I think the question is I feel like Peter's trying to purposely distance himself from it, or maybe someone else is, because clearly there's some sort of severe slice in the relationship there. I mean, someone else I think also mentions on Twitter that the big huge novelty check thing that Happy's lugging around from the Shark Foundation one, it's actually signed by Pepper, not Tony. So that could be something implying one way or the other. But I think it's interesting to consider the fact that because there's Peter's own viewpoint for what happened to him in between Infinity War and Endgame as well, and to consider what that actually meant for his character. Clearly the way the film's it seems like the way the film's being set up from this trailer that Peter's basically trying to avoid being a superhero altogether because he's just so completely dead, petrified, and terrified of dying once again or whatnot. And in particular, I wonder if he's putting some of that on Tony or trying to project some of it on him. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the suitcase is that it said BFP. There you go. It's confirmed. Uncle Ben fucking existed. You don't have to go on tirades about it. I get people want it mentioned, and that's totally understandable. But I've had some people be like, he doesn't exist. The MCU ruined it. Okay, I'm not going to get into it, but I like that tidbit, and I'm hoping that with how Mysterio does illusions, he'll conjure something up. But last thing I'll say, something I noticed when Quentin Beck appeared and started going around and casting his quote-unquote spells or whatever, fighting off Hydro Man, the shapes that it made. Now they made the Illuminati shape, which I think that's that is on his costume, on the lapel type things. But I was thinking they looked very similar to the magic that was taught at bless you.
It was a cough, actually.
Oh, well, even so, bless you. But I was thinking it looks very similar, at least to me, to the magic that's taught at Kamar-Taj in the MCU, at least. So I was wondering, does he have some kind of ties to Kamar-Taj or Doctor Strange? Which I know people have already told me that the point of Mysterio is that he doesn't use real magic, it's just illusions. And I know that. I'm not saying he's an actual sorcerer, but I'm wondering if something happened, or if he has some kind of ties between him and Kamar-Taj, where it's maybe he's trying to replicate it, and maybe people will think he's like that guy they saw fighting off those two aliens at the beginning of Infinity War, because that was on the TV when that was happening. So maybe to some degree, I'm wondering if he was inspired by or is connected to something from Kamar-Taj, because that would be a very interesting new spin on his character and a nice little way to tie together Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, at least to me. But moving on from that, we have some thoughts on a certain movie that came out last month, a certain Golden Globe winning movie, thank God.
We have
some thoughts to share on. What?
I hate that can't be said of Black Panther. Sorry, I just have to say that.
Who knows? Maybe the Oscars will treat them, but we'll see. But yeah, we have some thoughts on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So, Ian, why don't you go first?
All right, sure. So, I mean, it's been a little while since I've seen the movie, a couple weeks. I haven't been able to get out to see it more than once, which is unfortunate because this is a film that definitely is one that warrants repeated viewings. Not necessarily. I mean, there probably are numerous different Easter eggs and little details and whatnot that I missed that I would love to comb over with multiple repeated viewings. But just because the film is so freaking good, that this film deserves you seeing it in the theater and then seeing it in the theater again and then seeing it in the theater again and then seeing it in the theater again. It's honestly that damn brilliant a movie. And it was really, really fun seeing it for myself. I actually saw it by myself, which is like the third of three movies in my life that I've ever done that with. So I mean, it was interesting doing that. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The way that, I mean, it's almost a pitch perfect recreation in so many ways of Miles Morales, origin story in the Ultimate Comics Spider-Man series, but also managing to add in all of the multiverse, Spider-Verse, Web of Life and Destiny-esque shenanigans that comes about as a result, which actually works really well for the film. Like, it never feels intrusive or hard to follow or weird, or whatnot, and that's very much to the film's credit for that, because that could get pretty confusing. I mean, granted, I'm a comic fan, so and a sci-fi fan and whatnot, so multiverses and whatnot aren't really that hard to sell for me. But I don't know if the casual audience goer would have the same issue. But I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that aspect of it. The one thing, there are a couple minor quibbles I do have here and there. Well, the big thing. Well, okay, let me do some more positive before I get into the only two like real negatives I really found about the movie. For instance, I like the fact that they folded in multiple different villains into the movie's plot, not just like the Green Goblin actually is barely in the movie. Funny enough, he's only in like the first 10 minutes or so. Like, he kind of disappears from the film pretty quickly. And then the main kind of antagonist is the Kingpin, which was really well realized and really well voiced. And then you've got this really cool rendition of Dr. Octopus that I'd love to see in more films, or just adapted to the comics somehow. I don't know how you would do it without do it at this point, but I'd love to see that particular design and that particular incarnation of Doc Ock in more stuff, because she was really fun. And even getting L. Thompson Lincoln Tombstone in there was a really fun little bit. He doesn't have that much dialogue, but I mean, playing him off as another guy working for Kingpin was actually really nice. I really love the dynamic for not just Miles' character, but like pretty much the whole supporting cast, with one or two exceptions, I thought were pretty damn well spot perfect in terms of adaptation and just straight up likability in the film. I mean, Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir are both an absolute hoot to watch. You could tell that they, people voicing the characters. Like, you could tell Nick Cage was having a hell of a time having the time of his life voicing that particular incarnation of Peter. And of course, there, not enough good things can be said about the two different,
like the 616 Peter that we get to know throughout most of the film, and Miles' own universe's version of Peter Parker, or Peter Parker and Peter B. Parker, I guess. And how enjoyable and well realized they both are.
And the film also probably has the most Spider-Man-esque moment ever adapted to any medium, with the one brief shot of Peter B. Parker's life in the one montage where we basically just see one of him curled up in a ball in at the bottom of his shower, in his sink with the shower head running and just sobbing his eyes out, is so goddamn Peter Parker Spider-Man. I cannot even begin to describe it. I love that moment, and I'm wondering if Chip Zdarsky just snuck in somehow to work on the film and just wrote that in quickly, because it feels like something he would do. But yeah, I love that a lot. The only real issue I did have with the film real issues are twofold. One, I really didn't like the application of Gonk was kind of unfortunate. Like, apparently Peter or Miles only just meets him at the end of the film, more or less, which for anyone remotely familiar with Gonk's character and the backstory he and Miles have in the comics, it's completely the antithesis of this. I mean, anyone remotely familiar with Spider-Man Homecoming, the MCU, will probably understand why this happened, namely that the MCU swiped Gonk, relabeled him Ned Leeds, and shoved him into that film and made him Peter's, longtime friend who was an absolute Lego fanboy. And it bothers me so much that we couldn't still keep that in this film. I don't really know why it was so necessary that both of us couldn't just share that, but that did kind of hurt me. And the biggest issue I take with it is actually the realization of SB//DR and Penny Parker, because I freaking loved her debut in the comics, which was actually the last issue of the Edge of the Spider-Verse miniseries that introduced Gwen with issue number 2. Issue 5 was the issue that established Penny, and yeah, she's not some kawaii, super goofy, fun, lighthearted anime character.
Basically, that Edge of Spider-Verse issue that she was first introduced in was more or less, what if Neon Genesis Evangelion and Spider-Man had a baby? To the point where they even have the 3 leads from Neon Genesis Evangelion cameoing in one scene and as classmates of Penny's. So it does really kind of annoy me that actually was kind of taken out of that was completely tossed aside. Now taking all of that aspect aside, her character is likable and enjoyable enough in the movie, and we do at least get the dark moment of realizing that the way that she became Peter Parker became Spider-Man rather, or the Spider character of her world, is because of her dad's tragic death. But every other aspect of her character is completely removed, and it did kind of really bother me a bit for that, especially considering how well they not only adapted Miles, adapted Peter, but even Gwen. This film's a phenomenal introduction to Spider-Gwen, and it very much comes across that Jason Latour, Robbie Rodriguez, and Rico Renzai and their work on that series was very, very, very well, faithfully and loyally adapted into this movie, but not so much with the creators who behind Penny's issue of just Spider-Verse and her character. It's disappointing, but otherwise, I freaking love the movie. I really did. I do, as I said, I do highly recommend it. It has the absolute funniest post-credit sting ever. I goddamn was laughing my ass off the whole time. And if you're remotely, if you're remotely in the theater and considering maybe leaving before the end credits with finish rolling, do not. It is very much worth sitting and staying for that post credits because it's hilarious. But yeah, not really a whole lot else I can say. I also did kind of tear up a little bit watching it when they actually had the thanking the creator credits roll when mentioning Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli. I like the Easter eggs referencing each of them on Miles and Aaron's phones respectively partway through the film, and seeing the other creators, again the Spider-Gwen creative team, the one referenced in the credits as well, was really touching. But yeah, not a whole lot else I can say. I'm very eager to see more. I'm really curious to see how the spin-off Spider-Woman film that's been announced is going to be handled, and the inevitable sequel of this movie as well. But yeah, awesome stuff. And with that, I'll pass it over.
All right. Well, I think some of the stuff that I most appreciated was what was actually different from the comics is obviously there's a lot that was changed about Miles's characterization and personality. I thought he was a little bit more charming, and his relationship with Peter was a little bit more fun to watch this time around. I think they did a really good job of blending Spider-Man and the original Origin of Miles together into like the same story basically, and shades of Spider-Verse in there too. It's kind of like a master class in mashing in different stories together and like creating something new out of them. Just because it feels so coherent and strong on its own, you wouldn't be able to tell that it's a patchwork of like 6 different comic arcs.
No, it's kind of the antithesis of the Dark Knight Rises in a way like that, because that you can very clearly tell several different Batman stories shoved together, whereas this is the opposite, where it's very
exactly, yeah. So I think that's something that impressed me a lot is that it pulls so much from the comics without feeling like just like pulling a bunch of random ideas out at random. Like it's not pulling out ideas from a hat and going, what's popular? They really thought about what would fit for this story. I think it was really smart to show some restraint and only have a handful of different alternate universe Spider people show up, because much like the original Spider-Verse arc, they could have gone way overboard with that and had like 30 different characters show up, like a reference to every Spider-Man thing that's ever existed, like all of these different versions. It could have been so cluttered and overstuffed, but they knew to take only a handful of really interesting and unique ones that would really showcase the concept of the multiverse and how different it can be from one to the other. And I was really impressed with what they did with Kingpin, because a lot of Spider-Man movies try to create a more personal connection between him and the villain, but like Kingpin and Spider-Man don't really have a whole lot going on in terms of like a personal knowledge of each other or like a history. But they still managed to make it work anyway. Like they focused on Kingpin enough to establish his motive and why he's doing what he's doing, so that we could get behind that and we could understand that. But they also didn't feel the need to work in some kind of weird contrivance like, oh, he's Uncle Ben's friend from high school who Peter grew up with. Like
he's the one the punk that shot Uncle Ben Parker.
Yeah, like they did that with a lot of them. Like Sandman is the guy who killed Uncle Ben. Doc Ock, is friends with Harry Osborn, and Peter has been a fan of his forever. Like that was an idea that was introduced in the animated series. Or okay, here's one: is the Lizard, like the thing that makes him become the Lizard is a mathematical formula that Peter Parker gives him. They always try to like have Spider-Man be a huge instrumental figure in these characters' origin. I like that they didn't go for that, and they just had here's a criminal in the city. He's been a crime boss for God knows how long, and Spider-Man's been trying to stop him, and then finally it gets to a boiling point. And they don't really have anything to do with each other in terms of their upbringing or origin, but the way they clash still works, and I think that's a really impressive way to do that, because not a lot of Spider-Man's villains actually have that personal connection to him, like like Shocker or like Sandman or hell, even like Vulture in the comics don't really know Peter personally or like have any really like any personal connection to his life behind the mask. So I think it was good that they didn't try to force one and like work in some kind of dumb alternate history for them. And yeah, it was also impressive how they were able to do so many villains, because they just accepted that some guys are just a thug for hire. Like you don't have to have Tombstone have this really dramatic backstory. You don't have to spend 20 minutes of the film setting up the Scorpion. Even Doc Ock can just show up. And, everyone knows who these characters are for the most part. And all we need to know is that they're working for Kingpin. It feels almost like reading an actual random middle arc of a comic story. Is like, if you pick up Spider-Man number 230 something, and, suddenly the Scorpion shows up, you you don't need to have like a huge recap of who he is. You just get, all right, Spidey's fought this guy before. He's a bad guy. Got it. And I wish more Marvel movies would try to do something like that in terms of like working in a lot of villains. Or hell, even a Batman movie could really like benefit from doing something like that. It's like you don't have to establish all of them. They can just be here. Like you only really got to focus that energy as a writer into the more personally connected ones like Osborn or Eddie Brock or I guess to an extent Otto Octavius, but I feel like that was a nice balance. And then obviously just the animation was like gorgeous and impressive. Like they had to really think outside the box and even invent some new animation techniques just to make this movie work. And I can't wait to see what they do with a sequel, because they're probably gonna do something like even more crazy, like have every universe have an extremely distinct art style, so everyone looks like really out of place when they go to them. So I'm already on board for whatever they're doing next. I can't wait to see what else they do, because now that these characters are established enough, you can do weird gimmicks like that and work on the excess like that. Like you can have like 30 Spider-Men in the next one, because the most important ones are set up and they're solid and we relate to them and we can follow them as our main characters. So you can have in all of the you can shove in all of the Flash and like extra junk for the sequel. So that's going to be a fun time when that happens.
You can throw in Leopardon.
Huh?
You can throw in the Leopardon or
yeah. Or Spider-Man from India, or hell, here's the alternate universe where he's the Punisher, stuff like that.
Manga Spider-Man. I want to see that style.
I love that issue actually of what if Peter Parker were the Punisher. I love that. But
I think I'll pass it on now.
All right. Yeah. I pretty much second everything y'all said. I'm gonna start off with the things I didn't like. There are only a couple, and these are nitpicks. These are like very, very minor nitpicks. Like they're not detrimental at all to the movie, but like they were just it's a testament to a movie when I can find one or two moments that I just find weird, because that just shows how much I'm nitpicking because the movie's so good. But first of all, I thought the pacing was pretty like it was almost a 2-hour movie. Longer.
But that's because they had so much they were juggling, and I'm amazed as to how they made it all work without it like tanking. But yeah, the pacing made it feel long. There were some weird lines and weird delivery, like the one moment when Peter, Miles, and Gwen all go to Aunt May's house to fix the goober, and like Miles goes up to Aunt May, and this could be like something really emotional. He says like, "Yeah, I was there when it happened, when Peter died." The way he said he was sorry felt like, I don't know what the direction on that was, but it was strange, because it should have been, he phrased it like a question, and it should have just been like him being like, "I am so sorry I let your nephew die," pretty much. But that, again, that's just a big nitpick from that delivery. But my big thing that I didn't like was, and I get that this is because they can't juggle so many characters, and I'm sure like someone up there said like you can't make the animated movie over 2 hours long because kids are gonna check out. It's already pretty long for an animated movie, for a kids animated movie, quote unquote kids, because I don't think it's a kids movie. It really isn't. But
it's an all good movie.
Yeah, but MJ, why is she attending the event
that her husband's murderer is setting up. Like, she's married to Peter. One can assume that she knows he's Spider-Man, that she's in the know about everything. Why is she attending this dinner, and why is she not with Aunt May helping Miles and 616 Peter and everybody else trying to stop Fisk? I get it's because they have so many characters to juggle. I mean, the reason they pretty much cut Genki's role out was one because of Homecoming and how they borrowed so much from his character for Ned, but also he was meant to have a larger role, and he was supposed to be there with Miles as they had Peter tied up to the to the punching bag in Uncle Aaron's apartment. But because of time and because they had so much to juggle, they had to cut him out because he would just be along for the ride for Miles, who's along for the ride with Peter and Gwen and everybody else. So it would have just been too much. But yeah, MJ not having that big of a role and not being with May during all that I just thought that was weird, and I don't see how that could work. But now onto the good stuff, because I'm done with all that. Oh, one more thing. I like Kingpin. I don't know if I like him being the one to kill Spider-Man. That just I like that they had the balls to just like straight up show Spider-Man, every kid's favorite hero, the one they look up to all the time, getting fucking his chest caved in by a slam to the ground. In a PG movie, that's hard. That's pretty hardcore. So I applaud the guts they had to do that, but I don't know if I like it being. Well, and I love Kingpin, but I don't. That doesn't.
I just add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think technically it was Green Goblin that killed him because he just kind of shoved him into the particle accelerator and it like mangled him so bad he couldn't even stand up. It's like it did kind of remind me a lot of the actual Ultimate book with Peter Parker's Last Stand, is because it's like he gets shot and then he gets like beaten on by all of the Sinister Six, but he still technically wins the fight. Really, he just kind of dies of his injuries after the fact, so no one like technically killed him in that. I consider it like the thing that really put him in that dire of a strait was still Green Goblin. Really, Kingpin just kind of like got the final blow that put him out, but he was already like unable to even stand up. Like it was over. He was like just like completely beyond any kind of recovery at that point. Like, I don't mind someone like Kingpin just kind of running over to get that final hit, because really it's just like the explosion is more of what killed him in my opinion. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's just what I take from it.
No, I get that. And that's definitely understandable, because like I guess like the reason Peter was telling, I don't think Peter knew like that. I don't think 1610 Peter knew. I don't think 1610 Peter knew that. I don't think he knew that Miles was going to be able to just get the job done right then and there. So this was it. He's gonna die here,
and Miles, and he's like I felt like he was telling Miles like,
not like, I feel like he was just making Miles promise that he was gonna do it eventually, like, because I feel like he knew that it was just the end. And I can understand, like, yeah, like he was just done after that, like there was no coming back from that. But I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me. I get it's not supposed to, but like, I don't know, it just felt a bit too for me. But like, I like most of it. But yeah, back onto the good stuff now. Like you guys mentioned, the animation's fucking gorgeous. I'm mad at myself that I couldn't go see this in IMAX, because I thought that it was not getting an IMAX release, for some reason. Like, I looked at my local IMAX theater and it just did not show up. And then, like, after I already saw it twice and didn't really have the money to see it again, I saw that it was playing in IMAX, and I was like, shit, I could have gone to see that. But
oh, that'd be awesome to see that way. But with my luck, I'd get 10 minutes in and have the projector break. Like
I was lucky enough to actually get to see it in IMAX 3D.
Oh, God. I envy you. I mean, I see almost every big movie in IMAX 3D on the opening night, but like, I really wish I could have seen that one. But the fun thing is, I actually saw it 4 times, and the third time I saw it, I got to go to New York and see it in a New York theater with a New York crowd, and they were much more lively than the one in my hometown, which is depressing, but it's like a nice little thing to mark off my bucket list that I saw a Spider-Man movie in New York City. But I love the visual gags they have. Like when Miles throws the bagel at that one scientist and it just says bagel with an exclamation point as it bounces off of his head.
Oh yeah.
I love that stuff. And I love like near the end when he uses the Venom Blast on Kingpin, he does the shoulder touch, and when he says hey, it has like hey behind him.
Oh yeah.
I love that it embraced that it was a comic book. From the thought boxes to the visual gags to the different art styles, I loved it. The soundtrack might be my favorite film soundtrack. I want to say it might be. I love. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. I just want to add, and I'm going to add my voice into the numerous others on Twitter I've seen of her who said the same thing. God damn this movie for making me like a Post Malone song. That song is awesome.
Yeah, I love Sunflower, and I love Home by Vince Staples. I was mad that wasn't in the actual movie and that was in the credits, because I kept replaying that teaser trailer with that song in it in my head ever since last year. And I felt like it should have been in a scene, but I'm just gonna say this right now. What's Up Danger and the scene that accompanies it is probably one of the best scenes in any comic book film, and I'm going to take the leap and say I think it's one of my favorite scenes in any film whatsoever, because it's just such a powerful, moving, like, I think I cried the first time I watched it, and I'm not as attached to Miles as some other people are, but I was with him on this journey he took throughout the movie, from Peter getting axed, from him figuring out his powers, from him not having good communication with his parents, from him feeling like he doesn't belong in this school, from his uncle, from finding out his uncle was not who he thought he was, to his uncle getting killed too, and just being told he's not ready, and then finding it within himself to be ready and taking that leap of faith. And a good tidbit somebody mentioned was that, I think it was one of the directors, I think it was Phil Lord who said this, the reason the glass breaks when he jumps off of that building is because he's hugging onto it so tight because he's still really scared, but he takes that leap anyway. And that's what I think that scene is what made me fall in love with Miles Morales, at least this version. And just seeing him like finally make that leap over the buildings, and then his comic book cover slams on top of the others. That is one of the best scenes. That's one of my favorite scenes in any film. But yeah, Miles, this is my favorite version of Miles Morales. And like 2018 has been a really good year for him, because like first the PS4 game gave him much more of a character, in my opinion. His life, like, he was still very similar to Peter, but they were addressing how similar his life was to Peter. And it different enough from the comic.
Feel like its own thing because like his dad dies
Instead of Aaron Davis, which I thought was very interesting in how that was handled. His new book with Saladin Ahmed, which we talked about in episode 0. That's really good.
Even the recent issues of Champions that he's been part of. And Champions issue 24, which discussing gun violence in schools and the effect that that's having on kids with Miles' character. Still one of the best things that came out in the entirety of 2018 comic-wise.
Yeah, and like even though Spider-Geddon is a flaming pile of hot garbage,
Agreed.
It's terrible. It's one of the worst things I've ever read in my life. At least Miles had like a good shining moment as a leader that was unfortunately overshadowed by Dan Slott's never-ending love for Otto Octavius, but it was still him. Like, he took the Enigma Force, he became Captain Universe, he led the charge against the Inheritors. That's a big step up for Miles's character.
And he even did get Otto to kind of to listen to him and to respect his voice or whatnot, which is something that like Otto's still to this point is still completely incapable of doing with Peter. Yeah,
and so 2018 was a great year for Miles, and I think this is like the crowning achievement of Miles. When this new generation of kids hear the names Spider-Man and Miles Morales, they're going to think of this movie without a doubt, no question.
Hopefully, many movies to come.
Hopefully. This is like this generation's version of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, I think. And even though I love Homecoming, and I do have admiration for the first Amazing Spider-Man movie despite its flaws, neither of them felt like this is the one that's going to have that kids are going to remember growing up. This is the one that they're going to be nostalgic about. And I feel like Into the Spider-Verse is that one for this new generation of Spider-Man fans. Also, I wanted to say, Daniel Pemberton's score is incredible. It's one of my favorite film scores because it reminds me so much of the score from the Ultimate Spider-Man video game with the techno aesthetic, and I think that fits Spider-Man so well, especially because this movie is based on the Ultimate comics pretty much in a way. I
mean, more or less we're in the Ultimate Universe. That's
sad. And like that introduction where like you had that first track that was just slowly building in tension as the logos were warping. That was intense. And then like
I love that touch, by the way. Showing off the different versions of the Columbia Pictures logo and whatnot.
Yeah, I love that. And then like Miles' theme was great too in that movie. Everybody, like the music throughout was just amazing. Prowler's theme is like one of the best villain themes, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
When you hear that howl, like when I heard that, every time I heard that howl, it just scared the shit out of me. And what
it's so intense.
It is like it just every time there was a chase, especially in the second chase after he found out his uncle was the Prowler. That chase was like, as you heard the howl keep going on and on, that was just anxiety inducing. And it's just like, this guy could be anywhere and he could just kill Miles within a second. But the thing I love the most is that after he died, at the end of the second act, that howl is brought back during What's Up, Danger, but in a more father, the best of his uncle, the best of Peter, the best of himself, and just bringing it all together. And that's something I loved so much. It felt like it was just so powerful. And I know I've been saying that a lot, but it was. The cast was great. I will do a bit of a counterpoint to what Ian said about Penny Parker. Yes, it's not like her character in the comics at all, really. Her character is more similar to Shinji Ikari from Evangelion, as you mentioned.
Again. doing cameos in her class. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and I get that, but with how we had, I don't think like I don't think having another down in the dump character would have worked. We needed another character who is more sorry. But I don't think having another kind of down in the dumps character, because like you had Peter B. Parker, played great by Jake Johnson, by the way. Like his voice threw me off like in the first trailer he was featured in, but like now like it's I love him. I think he's great. But
yeah, agreed. And also shout out to Chris Pine for his brief stint as 6'10".
I was really surprised how awesome he actually sounded. Like you wouldn't think that Chris Pine of all people could play like a good Spider-Man. Like a lot of people kind of fan cast him as like a Green Lantern or like a you know, like a Captain America type of character, but like he actually really nailed what little he actually had to say. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, like it's my new favorite role for him, even more so than him as Steve Trevor. And I loved him as
that
Steve
voice
Trevor.
when he's like, "Hey kid," yeah.
Like when we first heard that voice in like the first trailer we see Peter Parker in back in like June, I think it was. And you hear him say, "Hey kid, you're like me." How people are like, "That's not Jake Johnson." Wait, it sounds like Chris Pine. And I'm like, no, they didn't get Chris Pine for this movie. It's probably just some weird. It's probably still Jake Johnson, but just some weird take they did that makes him sound a bit different. But no, it was Chris Pine, and I was very happy with that. But
I also,
but yeah,
sorry, just one more little anecdote to that. I wanted to add, sorry. I also just really love the fact that, first of all, Spidey Bell's one of the best Christmas songs ever. And it was totally worth buying a
small semi-additional soundtrack to have that song.
But I particularly love the fact that apparently Chris Pine actually asked Sony Pictures to let him to actually sing the full song. And in fact, I think I even heard that he actually paid them to do it.
Wow.
I just love the little bit.
I love
it.
That's pretty cool. You know, I had this little worry, like, what if he just did this because it was like a quick paycheck? Like you just read some lines, he doesn't have to really like get too into it. It's just like, hey, we need a like 30-year-old male voice actor, you know, for this. And like, but apparently, like hearing that makes me a lot more excited because it means he actually was like super into doing it. Because you don't do that kind of thing. You don't pay money to the movie if you're not passionate about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and particularly for something like that.
And like, there's a theory that either he was actually Ben Reilly, or there is a Ben Reilly out there that actually dyed his hair brown. Because this universe's Peter was blonde, so maybe we'll see him again. I'd like him to voice Ben Reilly. But
you know what? Of all of the Spider-Man ideas that just don't ever get adapted or even talked about, I think the Clone Saga would like. I think that would be kind of fun, just because we never see that. And like we've already accepted the idea of something as crazy as like universe hopping. I think doing clone stuff in the future of these movies is like actually less outside of the normal than the universe hopping stuff. I think like a mass audience could totally accept that. I would love to see a Clone Saga movie in this animated thing. Like obviously shortened and condensed and rewritten in a few places, but same kind of like premise.
I was still hoping that at some point in the movie just was, you know, Peter B. Parker is leaving and be like, oh, by the by, don't let anyone clone you. Because that's a version of Peter that probably has lived through the Clone Saga in his own reality.
Yeah.
And I think I think that even happened in the Spider-Man comic at one point where Peter's like, this is very, very important. Don't let anyone ever clone you.
Oh, yeah. I think that was in Spider-Man. I think that was when 616 Peter was leaving. But yeah, back on track. Like, you had Peter B. Parker, who was down in the dumps. You had Gwen Stacy, who was down in the dumps. I think if Penny Parker was how she was in the comics, it just would have been, like, too depressing. So I'm fine with them changing her personality up to be like a more bubbly kind of parody on anime, which I mean, like the comic is, but it's a parody on more like serious anime like Evangelion. So I'm fine with them like doing a different take on that and making her more excited and bubbly and all that. And she had some pretty funny moments. I thought she was fine. Noir was the standout alternate Spider-Person, and John Mulaney as Spider-Ham, which one of my friends is like a hardcore Spider-Ham fan, so he just loved every minute of that. But yeah, I love the supporting cast. Aunt May was great. I loved Lily Tomlin as her. I loved Catherine Hahn as Doc Ock. I thought that reveal was just amazing. Where like she's just like, my name is Olivia Octavius. I'm like, what? And then you see her drop the lab code and her arms come out, and I'm like, oh fuck. I'm glad that Sony kept that secret because there was so much they didn't keep secret from this movie.
I remember actually there you can go back and see one of the scenes, like the chase scene, where Miles is first learning how to swing. Yeah. It's very cleverly edited because I didn't pick up on it the first time, but they actually cut out all of the parts of that scene that she's in, which is like 30 whole seconds, maybe more, of like her chasing and like swinging at them and everything. And I didn't even realize until rewatching it like yesterday how much like was cut out of that. And you can see the cuts because the music kind of shifts tones a little bit, or sometimes they're like Miles will be in one spot and then it'll cut to another frame and he's somewhere else because they were trying to cut around it. And I was so happy to see like that they're, you know, those clips that they put out were saying something really important in the final cut. That's really I want more promotional material to do that, where they'll just another great example. Infinity War trailers had the Hulk in them, even though he wasn't actually really in the final battle at Wakanda in the movie.
Yeah. Which I was fine with. People were like, oh, they lied to us about the Hulk. It's like, are you lying are you hating that they didn't show the whole movie? Because I mean, I'm fine with that change. It had good development for Bruce Banner as a character. But I'm rambling. But yeah, unfortunately, Sony had to balance it out by releasing the "What's Up Danger" scene online like days before the movie. And people were like, "Why would you show this incredibly important scene to people online for free?" Which I mean, I'm glad because I'm rewatching it so much now after seeing the movie. But like, I'm just like so. Sony takes one step forward and then two steps back. But where was I? Yeah, Catherine Hahn, loved her. I've noticed people are shipping her and Aunt May a lot, which I would be fine with if she was not involved with the death of May's nephew. That sits kind of badly with me. I don't think May would take too kindly to dating a villain that had a hand in cast an only family aside from Mary Jane. So beforehand, perfectly fine, I think. But after, because I saw that fan art that somebody made of like the cover of Aunt May and Aunt May and Doc Ock getting married, like how like in that original comic, somebody did a fan art where it was Into the Spider-Verse, and it was Lily Tomlin, Aunt May, and Catherine Hahn, Doc Ock getting married.
I need to see that. I need to find that.
It's so like it's really funny, and I like that. But again, like I'm fine with that beforehand. After the death of Peter, probably not, but that's just a minor thing. But what I mentioned before was that the deaths in this movie were surprisingly like hard hitting and effective. And like I didn't think I thought that the movie was going to start out with Peter dead. Like I thought it was or it was like he faked his death. And before the third trailer came out that like told us everything, I thought that it was going to be like Jake Johnson Peter was actually regular Peter, but like in hiding because he faked his death or whatever. But no, they went all the way with it. They killed that blonde boy. They killed Aaron Davis. They killed Kingpin's entire family. That was like all that was just rough, but it was in a good way. So like I'm glad they were able to take that step to do that, and I'm surprised the movie didn't get a PG-13 rating, because I mean a man got shot and a man's chest was caved in, and a mother and a son were killed in a car crash. I mean, I know there have been deaths in
appreciate the hell out of that. Like,
yeah,
it would have been so easy to like really like water down the movie and make it feel like some kind of like Disney Channel kind of thing, but they didn't pull their punches in some spots, and I really appreciate how it does feel like a Spidey comic, because you know there's death and consequences and like violence. It's just that it also still has a light tone in spite of that, and that's kind of hard to capture for some of the movies, because some of them seem more dark than they should be, or others seem too light. Like, it's hard to balance that for a lot of the live action ones.
Exactly. Like, the thing about comics is that the reason comics work is that you blend all these tones together. You will have a moment with a really sad and tragic death. Like, let's take this for example. Gwen Stacy's death in issue, it was 121, right? Like, this should be basic knowledge, but I'm blanking. It was 121, right?
I'm not good with issue numbers.
Wait, which issue for what?
Gwen Stacy's death?
Yeah, that was 121.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
If you want to get technical, it was like 120, and then like, no, it was 121, and then 122 was like the whole rest of the story. Like, she died at like the very tail end of that issue.
Yeah.
But that's the one where it happened.
Yeah. What I appreciate about that's like a good prime example, because the scene is set during the daytime. Everything is in bright colors. Nothing is desaturated. It all looks like it's something perfectly readable for a kid. And then you have Gwen dying and that's
something hardcore, but like
life doesn't in comics and in life in general, bad things are going to happen regardless of the tone of the day, or if that makes any sense. Like, bad things happen even when things seem lighthearted. And as much as I like how the death was done in Amazing Spider-Man 2, it was done at night in a dark clock tower. Blood was starting to run down her nose as Peter was holding her and crying.
Even the little web outreached hand thing is
yeah. Yeah. Some people saw that as like too much. I thought it was fine. But like, you don't have to, just because there's adult themes in something doesn't mean you have to change up everything to cater to those adult themes, or like you don't have to get rid of those adult themes altogether. Because I mean, I for one did like Amazing Spider-Man. I was like, okay, yeah, Andrew Garfield, too attractive for a teenage Peter Parker. If he was just adult Peter Parker, I think he would have been fine. But because they wanted to do teenage Peter again, he got stuck in that position looking like a 28-year-old model. But anyway, like, I liked the darker take, but I'm just like, does every scene have to be at night? Does he always have to? Like, if you want to go for a darker take, fine, but that doesn't mean literally making the movie darker. But what, Xavier, what you said about this movie with how they have really hardcore deaths and still having like family friendly, really fun scenes, I think that's a good testament to how comics are and how they should always be and how comic book movies should be. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up because that was a good insight. I
don't know if we're gonna spoil that.
I assume we don't want to for people who have not seen the movie.
Well, for one, we have to tell everyone, go see it right now. What are you doing? Why are you listening to a podcast where we talk about Spider-Verse? Go watch it. Turn this off right now. Click the big red X. Yeah. Go get a ticket right this second.
Just delete the video. Just unsubscribe from the channel.
No. Don't do that. Don't do that. No. Like the video, let the ads play out. Let all the ads play out.
Yeah. Break your laptop over your knee and then set your house on fire and then see Spider-Verse.
Yep.
And then once you've seen it, go see it again.
Exactly. Just stay at the do what that guy did where he saw Infinity War 50 times. Just go see Spider-Verse 50 times. Get it to 1 billion. Yes. It deserves 1 billion. But okay, so I'm just gonna go. Okay, I'm assuming all of you left to go see Spider-Verse. So if you're back here, then or if you don't care about spoilers, then hey, welcome. Oscar Isaac is Miguel O'Hara. I am all for. And here's the thing: I'm not as inclined to what Miguel is all about as some other people might, but I
am. I've read every Spider-Man 2099 book.
Yes, of course you have. God, that sounded so rude. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for that.
Well, no, it's kind of like my thing is I obsessively if I decide I like a comic character, I read everything. Yeah. So I've done that with Deadpool and Moon Knight and Spider-Man and Punisher. Like I really sit down. I find like the complicated reading lists that have like 800 entries, and I either find them at like a used comic store or find them online, and I want to know the whole story. So
yeah, I definitely get that. I just don't have the time for that. But I will one day. One day I will sit down and just read everything.
I would like to do that too. I've read a bit of I've read a bit of Miles stuff or Miguel stuff. Sorry. I read the I have like the first a trade that's like the first 12 or so issues of Spider-Man 2099 that I've read. I found the second one the other day actually for my birthday, and I'm gonna read that. And then I've read the Revived series that Peter David did a couple of years ago after Superior Spider-Man ended. I read the entirety of that, and then the first issue of the All New, Different Era I read. I didn't like the ending. I dropped it. I have heard that the book gets a lot better, so I do want to read that volume at some point, but that's kind of where most of my 2099 Spidey experience comes from.
Yeah. I need to read his stuff through and through one day, but at least from what I know that Miguel Spider-Man is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Xavier, but isn't Miguel's Spider-Man much more serious and
He's kind of like an inverted Peter Parker, is where he's more of like a jokey, sarcastic kind of jerk as Miguel, but as soon as he throws on the costume, he gets a little bit more stoic and serious. Because people also look at Spider-Man differently in the year 2099. He's not like a pariah to the public. Like the media doesn't hate him; they love him. They look at him as an outlaw. He's like the only guy standing up to the evil corporations and the criminals that own everything. So when he swings by, the public loves him, and that makes him take it more seriously. But when he's just being himself, as a guy on the street, he's kind of a jerk. And that's I feel like that's really fascinating, is because being Spider-Man makes him act more mature. It makes him finally get serious for the first time about anything. But otherwise, he's just kind of I don't know, when he talks to people, normally he's more of an Archer type. If you ever seen that show Archer, he talks that to people. He's just my favorite piece of dialogue that really sells me on his character is his boss says, "Miguel, do you know what my father would say if he were alive today?" And then Miguel goes, "Help, help, I'm trapped in this coffin." and that's how he talks to his boss at work. And That's the best. That's why I always thought he was a little bit better than the comic version of Miles, is because that like pretty much everything about Spider-Man 2099 is kind of flipped on its head from what Peter is doing, and that makes it like a way different experience to read it. And that's it's kind of why I was really excited to, finally get something with Miguel in it, because I think those little things that make him unique are really cool. And I hadn't really thought of it before, but like that is perfect casting. Like Oscar Isaac looks and sounds exactly how I think Miguel would probably sound in real life. Yeah. And like he's only doing the voice, but like he would work for a live action movie as Miguel O'Hara, because he's also supposed to be a little older. He's not like a teenager. He gets his powers when he's like 35.
Yeah, because like he basically gets like it's kind of like a drug trial thing, sort of gone wrong in a way. And his boss is kind of trying to kill him off by giving him this addiction to this drug thing that he can't get a hold of, or something like that, when they want to silence him, or something along those lines. I can't quite remember the exact details of his origin.
It's basically like Alchemax is running illegal experiments trying to recreate dead superheroes. They're performing tests on people that are actively killing them. Like they try to recreate Spider-Man, and the guy just like dies from it. Miguel threatens to go to the police and blow the whistle on them, and then they say that, okay, one, we own the police. We're like, the company has that much influence. You can't go to anybody. If you go to the media, we'll just shut it out. Two, we're just in case you find anyone you actually can like tell on us to. We've also been like secretly slipping drugs into your food at work, so that you're going to become dangerously addicted to this drug. And one, we could throw you under the bus and then say that you're not credible because you're like an addict. And two, we can also cut off your supply of it and make you go like super ultra crazy from the withdrawals. So they kind of like blackmail him. Ugh. And he goes and tries to like figure out a way to cure himself of the addiction using the device that they had that created the Spider-Man that died. But it actually works on him this time. And then obviously the guy who sabotaged it and trying to kill Miguel, his boss, like dies in the explosion. So now no one knows that Miguel has these new powers except for him. And he also no longer has the addiction to the drug. So like he's basically just got like a whole new lease on life and new powers. So he decides if he can't fight this evil, corrupt company as himself, he's going to do it as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Want that in a movie. All of that's awesome.
Yeah. Maybe we will see it in the sequel. I'd hope they dedicated a good amount of time to him, because
for myself watching the movie, I noticed that like they have like references to Alchemax throughout the movie, right? Like it's Alchemax facilities that Octavia works in. I think it's where and I mean, like, I was thinking, I was watching the movie, like, this is kind of neat, like showing Alchemax showing up. Like they could actually easily introduce Spider-Man 2099 in a feature film. And then the post-credit scene happens. I'm like, okay, yeah, you awesome that you've done that. Give me more of this for the sequel.
Yeah. Well, two cool things that I noticed about that is, one, here's a neat little thing that they worked into the comics recently, is that Alchemax forms from the ashes of Oscorp. Like as soon as like Norman Osborn is outed as being like a psycho, the company kind of crumbles and all of its assets and like resources are reformed as Alchemax. So it's technically like rebooted Oscorp. And two, the spider that bites Miles glitches the same way as everyone else does who's not in their correct universe, which means it's not native to Miles's universe. That means it came from 2099. Yeah, maybe.
I bet it would, because the thing that was interesting about it is that the legs were glowing blue. It looked like a technologically advanced spider or something like that. Because I'm just like, I don't think it's a coincidence that they chose that design for this spider, because it could very well be from 2099's universe. But the reason I ask about Miguel's personality is because, like, in this post-credit scene, I thought it was down to a T for a bit, like as he was talking to his name is Lila, right?
Yeah, the AI
Yeah.
is Lila. In the
Yeah.
comics, she's programmed to look like Marilyn Monroe, but I don't know if they.
Mhm.
I think they made her look like just like generic sci-fi hologram lady because they couldn't quite get the rights or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, like he seemed to be down to a T, like as he was like talking to her, at least like I said from my knowledge of him. And then when we get to the big meme of him jumping into the 60s cartoon, and I'm nitpicking because this is just meant to be a gag while also being like a thing for the sequel. But when he starts freaking out over that Spider-Man's still pointing at him, I'm like, serious Spider-Man 2099, I don't know if he would freak out over that.
I think he would because sometimes he kind of.
It's
Well,
just-
okay. The thing about him,
it's just a
being,
gag.
the thing about him being more serious as Spider-Man is it's because there's a lot of expectations of him,
Yeah.
and like like there's at one point they start like forming a religion like around him. Like there are
Oh,
people
yeah.
in the streets dressed up as Spider-Man 2099.
I mean, like
He-
to compare
When it's
that,
like a life or
Theo's,
death
like,
situation,
yeah.
or like he has to perform for the public, he really like puts himself into that like I mean something to people, like that kind of mindset. But there are other times where
Yeah.
he's still like the real Miguel underneath kind of pokes out and he'll say something goofy or stupid. Like at one point there's a villain that just kind of bursts out of nowhere and is like like shooting guns around and looking all scary, and then turns to see Spider-Man, and then Miguel just goes, hi. And it's like just totally a funny moment. Like
Yeah.
yeah, he just kind of breaks his character of being, like super serious for that. So I feel like that's still in his character, but I do get where you're coming from. Is that they might just make him kind of like a snarky, like Peter Parker 2.0 in
Yeah.
Spider-Verse 2 or whatever.
Mhm.
I hope they don't. I hope they establish that he's an inverse of Peter Parker, and I guess Miles pretty much. Well, no, because Miles is different enough to where like I think he as himself and he as Spider-Man are very similar in personality, but we may see that develop in the next movie as to how he distinguishes the two alter egos. But I hope that was just a gag. And again, it wouldn't be inaccurate if he broke that character, but I don't know. It was just a weird nitpicky thing, but I love that post-credits scene for the most part.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. And I'm glad that this movie was so self-aware about Spider-Man as a cultural phenomenon. Like
Mhm.
what's become of that name and that brand and franchise as the years have gone on. From the 60s cartoon to them like replicating the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15 to
to even
there was-
referencing the dancing bit from Spider-Man 3.
Yeah,
We don't talk
yeah.
about this.
I love that. I wish they didn't show that in the goddamn TV spot. I wish that wasn't
Yeah.
shown because
I
I would have
know.
died laughing in the theater if I saw it for the first time. But yeah, I'm like, this movie is like the big. Whenever you hear that a movie is a love letter to this or a love letter to that, this movie is the best love letter to Spider-Man, while also being a great origin story for Miles Morales. And unless Apple buys Sony and just all the rights revert back to Marvel and we get no more of these, I'm looking forward to the future. I hope that if that thing does happen, Marvel will still like make those Spider-Verse movies made. I'm being super hopeful about that, but again, this is a possibility because I still want Tom Holland and MCU Spidey to go on. I want him to go and have his character develop for 20 years. also still want this Spider-Verse franchise to carry on. So we'll see what happens. But we have gone on very long. I think this is almost 2 hours. We just had a lot to talk about, but I think we got to wrap this up right now. So, Ian, any final statements?
I mean, this movie was fantastic. Far From Home looks very, very promising. Definitely go see this movie now. That movie in July. Don't try and go and see that movie now. You won't be able to. I'm sorry. I mean, you can try. I don't think I'll success. I can't guarantee 100% success rate. I can't guarantee, that so long as there are tickets, there are still seats available in the theater you go and see Into the Spider-Verse in right now, though, you can still go and see this movie in theater. So, which you all should definitely do. I mean, even if you have seen it before, go see it again. Whether you want to find other people who haven't seen it, go see it with them, or even just going by yourself and seeing it again, or even going and seeing with a bunch of other people who've seen it again. Just see this movie multiple times. It's a phenomenal love letter to Peter, to Miles, to Gwen. It's a love letter to the entire Spider-Man franchise and history of the character and the comic series as a whole. It's a really not sweetest movie. It's a beautiful piece of animation that's honestly, I think, going to be very, very it ideally would be very, very motivational and inspirational to future films, which coming out. So for all those reasons and more, go see this movie. And again, go see Far From Home in July. Not now.
All right, Xavier, what do you have to say?
I just had a great time. Thank you guys for having me on. And yeah, definitely go see Spider-Verse if you haven't already, even if you listen to us spoil the hell out of it. I actually have a video that I'm working on that'll come out in next, 2 days after this is recorded. So maybe before this even comes out, where I give my thoughts on it a little more in depth. Yeah, just again, I appreciate being on. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Oh,
no problem. It was great having you. My final statements. Far From Home looks really good. I hope that it wins over some of the people who weren't too pleased with Homecoming.
One of those people.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. It's definitely understandable. Yeah, I hope it wins over those people. I hope it's a very good movie. I hope it's great. Go like you guys said, go see Into the Spider-Verse as much as you can. Buy every copy of it on Blu-ray, buy every piece of the merchandise, support the hell out of this movie. This is the one time where I'm like, give Sony all of your money. Yeah. You can follow the podcast on Twitter. It's at LOTE_podcast. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at the Alec Thorn. You can follow Ian on Twitter. He is at Kal-El Data. You can follow Xavier on Twitter at Godzilla Mendoza. You can follow On Comics Ground, which is at On Comics Ground. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give the podcast a like. Yeah, we hope you guys had a good time listening, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. See ya.